are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Jiggers Place. Boy, am I glad to be here today. Despite having had the last 2 days off for the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, you know, I'm ready for a vacation. So I guess that's what it is when you're, you know, out of the office. You know, what can I say? You just, it all piles up and then it all comes crashing down. So, but anyway, welcome to Jiggers Place. We're gonna sort of have, normally we have a cocktail and a schmooze. But today, being the day after Rosh Hashanah, is a fast day. It's called the Fast of Gedalia. I won't get into all of the significance of this man Gedalia, but it doesn't end for another roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, committed host that I am, I'm gonna mix a cocktail, but I'm not gonna drink. But you know, want you to be able to imbibe, and I'll have my drink later after the fast ends. But we're going to be talking about one of the most consequential plays of the 20th century, Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. I have unfortunately not seen the play in a theater, but I have read the play, and it's a combination of marvelous and kind of mind-blowing. I've never taken acid, but I don't know. It seems to me like it must be a little bit like what that must be. Can't say from personal experience. So we're gonna talk about that for a little while here as we head into the end of the week. And you know what? I just noticed something. We've got the wrong background. So let's see if we can fix this. Well, maybe not. Oops. Okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So, in honor of talking about Waiting for Godot, I'm going to make a cocktail called the Godot, and it's a vodka cocktail, and because of, so to set the scene a little bit, so the play is done on an almost bare stage. It's a bare stage with kind of a tree in the middle of it, and so I'm going with real simple things here, and so I'm going to use just my rack vodka, which is Smirnoff vodka. It's a great vodka, nice, clean, very simple. You know, Woody Allen used to advertise it back in the 1960s. So we're going to use that. Some dry vermouth, just, you know, martini vermouth. And we've got a little crème de cassis, in this case, de Kuyper, and some orange bitters. I'm just going to use Angostura. And that's basically it. Now, it's mixed up in a mixing glass. Normally, of course, there would be ice in it, but in deference to my not drinking it until later, I don't want to have all the ice melt and ruin it. So I'm going to mix it without the ice. But normally, if you have a mixing glass like this, so you know you'd want it about half filled with ice. You want your bar spoon or your stir for mixing it, and it can be typically drunk in a coupe. Okay, that's the sort of round-shaped glass, if you will. This is one of my beautiful coupes from Barney's, if you remember that department store, which has now been defunct for a few years. Okay, so we're going to start out with 2 ounces of vodka, and so you can see it's a it's a strong cocktail here, which is fine. You know, it's well past, the sun is well past the yard arm, even in Hawaii. if you're in Hawaii and Alaska, where it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun's over the yard. Here in California, of course, it's 5, and if you're on the East Coast, it's 8 o'clock. So 2 ounces of vodka and a half ounce of dry vermouth. There we go. So vodka and vermouth might sound to you like a martini, and indeed, those are the 2 ingredients in a vodka martini, a dry vodka martini. The cassis, I'm not one who calls every cocktail a martini, but the cassis would definitely make it not a martini. So we're going to put a half ounce of crème de cassis, which is kind of a blackberry flavored liqueur. Has a nice kind of blackberry flavor. It also gives it some color. Okay, and then there you go, right? And then 2 dashes of orange bitters. Oops, wow, I'm gonna break my glasses here. Okay, and then if it had ice in it, we would stir it up. And we do that for about 20 or 30 seconds, making sure the ingredients are mixed together, they're iced down, and also some of the ice has melted. The water opens up the flavors in the cocktail. And then after doing that for about another 10 or 20 seconds, we put it in the coupe, and then I'd go, say a short blessing and sip it, and I'd go, I don't know, it's good, it's bad. Don't know, but in any event, that is the Godot. If you aren't getting the recipes, by the way, if you join my email list, just go to my website bemmel.com. Scroll down to the bottom. You can join my email list, and you'll get the recipes in the morning before the show every other week, and that way, if you're missing something, you'll still have time to go and get it. The bottom line is, if you don't have every single ingredient in a cocktail, you can still make the cocktail. Of course, it won't taste the same, but listen, it'll be a cocktail. So how bad could that be? So I just want to take a minute because I think that I believe ChatGPT was my assistant on creating this cocktail. So very clever. So 2 ounces vodka, clean, neutral base equals a barren stage, isn't that? And then a half ounce dry vermouth for the bitterness of waiting, right? Not sweet vermouth, dry vermouth. And then a half ounce of crème de cassis, dark fruit, deep melancholy. There is a melancholy aspect to the play. And then 2 dashes of orange bitter for some fleeting humor. And then garnish it with a lemon twist, a spiral garnish, right? Which is, sort of evocative of the endless cycle, not only of the play but of life. So, and then you could also garnish it with a single cherry or a single blackberry, kind of dropped into the bottom of the glass before you pour the cocktail in. So, all of that, a lot of fun. And okay, I will see you over on the couch. All right, so here we are, and this is the play, Waiting for Godot, again by Samuel Beckett. You can see one of the characters. This is I think this is Estragon here, and you can see the stage. The stage is bare, and it's. The play, by the way, is very short, so you could read it easily in one sitting. This particular volume is 85 pages long, and it's just it's just a marvelous, marvelous play. So a little bit about the play. Unlike some other plays where if I told you the plot, it might, dampen your enjoyment. Waiting for Godot is more of a slice of life play, sort of, right? The difference between a regular drama where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and in the end everything's kind of worked out. Slice of life is literally that. It's just you go into the lives of some people, you sort of start here, end here, and you're just seeing what happens during that time. There isn't the formal structure of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Slice of life became very popular in kind of the latter half of the 20th century, and I think Waiting for Godot would be, among the best examples of that particular type of dramatic play. Or, well, it's interesting because even that it's a difficult play to describe because it's a drama, but it's kind of a comedy. It's maybe a black comedy, tragic comedy, except for it defies being easily categorized, and that's one of the reasons why I think the play has endured and in many ways is so beloved. It's interesting. I don't know if you can see the picture behind me, but it's a little bit reminiscent of Waiting for Godot. It's like a coat and a hat kind of hung up. It actually looks like sort of a worn out person on a coat rack. It kind of makes me think of it. Anyway, so just some real basic information about Waiting for Godot, so you can get more of the flavor. It was first performed in 1953, so we're talking 8 years after the end of World War II. And World War II was the cataclysmic event of the 20th century. It literally was a world war. It affected virtually every country in the world, certainly every large country, the United States, India, China, Russia being the 4 countries with the largest land masses. Okay, but then just dozens and dozens and dozens of other countries, all of the countries of the British Commonwealth, Japan, which was a regional power at the time and seeking to become a larger regional power. The Dutch Empire it collapsed as a result of World War II. And South Africa, which was, of course, part of the British Commonwealth at the time, was involved, sent troops to fight with the Allies. France, of course, Germany, Spain was neutral, but not really. So, Canada, of course, another large landmass country, was on the side of the Allies. And the South American countries, although in some cases nominally neutral, there was a lot of espionage that was going on in these countries. So the carnage of World War II, the worldwide carnage in World War II, had a tremendously profound impact on the world, and how art and drama were displayed post-World War II took a significant change. And Waiting for Godot is certainly representative of that. So it's, as I've said a number of times already, it's a landmark play in modern drama. It follows 2 tramps. That's what they were called back then. There was no such thing as homeless people. They were tramps. They were men without a home. Vladimir and Estragon, and they are waiting for Godot. That is what the play is about, literally. And they wait by this barren tree for a man named Godot, and they have a series of conversations. Some are somewhat comic, some are somewhat tragic, some are philosophical.
And it's this conversation that they're having and the context of it that makes the play so interesting. Now, you may be thinking, by the way, when I first heard about this play, I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound interesting at all. It sounds boring. And that was why, by the way, as a teenager, I did not take the opportunity to go see it, which I regret now as an adult. Uh, the especially if it's well acted, I'm sure the conversations are not just fascinating to hear, but just entertaining, and because the two actors hopefully have a lot of rapport. They're in the play, they're long-standing companions, and so of course the interplay of the two actors is a lot of what makes Waiting for Godot work. So, and the reason they're waiting for Godot is they think he's going to give them direction or maybe salvation. It's not 100% clear what's going to happen once Godot gets there. But nonetheless, you feel the desire for him to show up through the characters on the stage. So as they wait, like I say, they pass the time in these fragmented conversations. Now, at intervals, they're joined by a wealthy landowner named Pozo, and his servant who is named Lucky. And Pozo sort of drags Lucky around because he has this rope around his neck that Pozo pulls on. Pozo treats Lucky abominably, while at the same time professing that he couldn't live without him. And of course, all of this is rich with metaphors and social commentary. Pozo and Lucky, again, bring both tragedy, comedy, sort of somewhat crazy philosophical ideas to the play that it takes what's happening between Vladimir and Estragon just to another height, and it also reflects back to Vladimir and Estragon somewhat of what they're experiencing. So again, the interplay of the four actors when Pozo and Lucky are on the stage becomes even more fascinating. So the play is in two acts, and in many ways, the second act is it's sort of a replay of the first act, which is where this idea of the sort of cycle comes in, and yet, of course, it's not, because I wish I could remember the French, but right, the more well, this is the opposite. The more things change, the more they stay the same. In this case, the more they seem the same, the more we're not paying close enough attention, and we realize there are always at least subtle differences, even in what we think is the same. So even in something as highly manufactured as some glassware I have, and I have a set of these red glass water and wine and either dessert or coupe glasses. Ostensibly, they're all the same, but if you look at them closely, there are minor differences in them, right? And that is, I think, one of the themes that Waiting for Godot brings to us. So, as you might guess, if you're at all familiar with slice of life plays, the play kind of ends where it began, which is Vladimir and Estragon are still waiting for Godot and seem to be just as enthusiastic about his coming as they were when the play started. So obviously there's comments on life there as well. Okay, so I came up with 6 thoughts on the play that I want to share with you. All reasons why I hope that that you will get a copy of the play and read it. I do think it would enhance seeing the play to have read it first. I'll put a link to the play in the show notes. It'll of course be an affiliate link, and if you click through it and buy a copy of this, I think I get 3 cents. Okay, so the first sort of theme and reason to and why the play is important and why I encourage you to read and hopefully see it is it really is a pioneering work of drama. So there's a school of theater called the theater of the absurd, and almost everything that happens in the play it's just absurd, right? You're reading, you're thinking like, this is just why are these guys doing this, right? And part of the reason for continuing to read it is to answer that question. And I think you do get answers, but it is absurd. It's farcical, and I think you'll find yourself sympathizing and laughing with, not so much at, Vladimir and Estragon when you read the play. So Beckett really dramatizes at the same time both the meaninglessness of or the seeming meaninglessness of life, the uncertainty of human life, and its antidote. So I don't read hopelessness in the play. Quite to the contrary, I think the play is a rather astonishing statement of hope. Now, perhaps that is my reading because that's my perspective on life. You may get a different reading out of it. And of course, that is one of the great aspects of truly enduring play is we all experience it a little bit differently. And so, because it's this sort of slice of life, it rejects plot, or at least traditional plot. It doesn't have the kind of character arcs that you often see in dramas where it seems at the end, the characters have learned some great lesson. There's no resolution in the sense of you go out and go, okay, done. I've watched it. I've read it. Okay. Don't have to engage in that ever again. Quite to the contrary, it will be an enduring source of contemplation for you. And its influence, the influence of Waiting for Godot can be traced in the work of Harold Pinter, Tom Stoppard. These are other great avant-garde playwrights especially the second half of the 20th century. So I think that's one truly wonderful aspect. The next is it is theater of minimalism. So whereas it's antecedent of a couple hundred years earlier would be opera, which is very elaborate sets, typically large casts, and a lot of things going on. This really harkens back to Greek drama, where while you might have some sets, it was really done in an amphitheater. The props and the sets were fairly minimal compared to what we saw, especially theater in the first half of the 20th century. This takes it even beyond that. It is truly minimalist, and it's a bare stage with this sort of tree, this leafless tree in it. And in that sense, if you've ever seen Pippin, the great musical, Pippin. Steve Schwartz, I believe, is the composer and lyricist. And I think he wrote the book as well, if memory serves. So Waiting for Godot is sort of a harbinger of the minimalism in which theater engaged starting in the mid to late 1960s in shows like Pippin, Godspell, JC Superstar. More elaborate productions have been done of those plays later, but the original plays were very, very minimalist, and the intensity of the drama, and in the case of these musicals, the music is really what, and of course the performances is really what drove these plays and these shows, as opposed to being awed by the sets. So I remember when I was a teenager, this would have been kind of mid to late 1970s, I went and saw a play called The Devil's Disciple. I believe it was starring Rex Harrison. It was at the Music Center in downtown Los Angeles. And frankly, I don't think it was a good play. One of the reasons why I concluded it wasn't a good play was because it had this elaborate set that turned for each act, and people would applaud for the set changes, but not for what was happening in the play itself. And to me, that is the opposite of how it should be happening. If the best thing happening on stage are set changes, that's a problem, right? And so I think that Waiting for Godot was a response to the elaborateness of theater. And by the way, not necessarily the first. So Our Town, for example, which Thornton Wilder, I believe Our Town, 1920s or 30s, not as minimalist as Waiting for Godot, but it was more along those lines. And so this is Waiting for Godot is part of a way of performing theater, of conceiving theater, that really puts the focus on the actors and actresses, as opposed to the sort of pomp of a show like Hello, Dolly. Now, of course, Hello, Dolly, the beautiful costumes, the luscious sets, they're all part of creating the gestalt of that show, right? But that's not necessarily the best atmosphere for every play and for every message and thought that theater can convey. Okay, so the radical minimalism, another reason to engage with Waiting for Godot. The next one is Waiting for Godot really engages in foundational questions of the human experience. Things like faith, like existence. Should one believe in God? How does one engage with the existential questions, the philosophical questions of life? And even not in a partisan way, but just politics as a force in human endeavor that people, oftentimes put their hopes in, perhaps wrongly so, right? And so to wrestle with these aspects of human life, it is both frustrating and fulfilling in this, and especially I think in these times when we're so used to solutions being served up very quickly, to living in a world of just busyness. Waiting for Godot it's a way station, it's an oasis where for perhaps a couple of hours, we can just contemplate these larger questions of life. And it gives us the nutrition to chew on so that we're not having to come up with it all on our own, but it in a good way challenges us to engage with these questions. So another of the enduring issues with which it deals is that of companionship. And I think especially in these post-COVID times, the question of companionship, the value of companionship, where so many people in our society are so cut off from other people for seemingly long periods of time. Waiting for Godot gets to the heart of companionship. And this is perhaps the most important issue with which we can wrestle, we can engage in this time in human history, at least in the United States. Okay, so next is waiting for Godot is really an innovative use of time in the sense that it is both immediate and timeless at the same time. I'm using time a lot. Right now I'm reading Einstein's short book that explains special relativity and general relativity. And that book is essentially a discussion of time from a scientific perspective. But of course, time is not just a scientific phenomenon, it is a philosophical phenomenon. And to consider time fully, we need to do so in all of its aspects. And waiting for Godot is an ideal vehicle through which to consider the philosophical aspects of time. So it engages in contemplation of the cyclical nature of existence that I talked about a little bit earlier. It also engages with the sort of emptiness, if you will, the endlessness of time, and yet the emptiness of it, and yet at the same time, the necessity to engage in time productively, because in the end, a human being's time on earth is limited, right? So these are, what do we do about that? Should we use our time wisely? And if so, how do we do that? And if not, what is existence really about? These are the kinds of philosophical questions around time that waiting for Godot comments on and draws us into. Okay, next, and I mentioned this just briefly because when I said it's a drama, it's also tragic, it's comedic. It really blends the two, but not in a traditional Black comedic way. It's I've never read another play that quite meshes the two in the way that Waiting for Godot does. It's not a tragedy, although there are tragic moments. It's not a comedy, although I think you will find yourself laughing. It's not a tragicomedy. It's not a comic tragedy. It is life. I mean, it is an authentic expression of life and the way these things come up. So to give you an example, so this holiday I mentioned that just ended yesterday, Rosh Hashanah. So it started Monday night at sundown. And my expectation was I was going to just go into the holiday kind of smooth sailing. Was on top of my work, didn't have a lot of worries there, didn't have any loose ends that I was rushing to tie up. And then less than 24 hours before the holiday started, I got a message from a longstanding friend of mine that a tragedy or a near tragedy had happened in his family, and could he come and stay with me, because it required him being here in Los Angeles as opposed to where he lived, right? And so here I was, just kind of going along, relaxing, looking forward to engaging in the holiday in a somewhat festive spirit, and glad that my friend contacted me, knowing that he could rely on me to help, and life changed in that just moment of receiving that message, right? And that wasn't the first tragic thing that happened over the next 36 hours, right? That is the nature of life. Life is like that. And yet something happened yesterday that was just comic, and I found myself laughing out loud. That is life. And that's, I think, the brilliance of Samuel Beckett's writing of Waiting for Godot. It is a reflection, if not it's not actual life, but it's a reflection of the authenticity of how life is. Okay, so that blending of comedy and tragedy, comedy and despair, and there's sort of this, I don't know, existential dread at bottom. Is something horrible going to happen if Godot shows up, or if he doesn't show up, right? And that's oftentimes how we look at life, probably mistakenly so. I think too often we raise the stakes of what's going on to the point where we're dreading, and oftentimes dreading it no matter what happens, right? And maybe the stakes are not that high. Maybe they're not. Okay. And then last, and I've mentioned this already a little bit, but Waiting for Godot was tremendously influential across literature and art. So again, coming out of World War II, especially, the idea of the sort of fundamentally philosophical play, that it's not a traditional drama. It's really there to get our brain cells activated. So this became, wouldn't call it necessarily a mainstay per se, but it became a way of engaging in art in the latter half of the 20th century in a way that it never really had been before. And there were a lot of people who were very confused, disturbed by what had happened in World War II, and they needed to process that experience. Some people just buried it. Other people engaged in it. So, there's a book by one of the leading lights of the Beat generation where he just kind of travels around the United States. I'm going up on the name of it. It's an amazing book. But that was an attempt to understand what had happened in the world. And Beckett was, I think, looking to help people of that time and future generations to really understand life at a different level than before. And this sort of it's not a plot, this theme of endless waiting, it has been used in other works, in other plays and films, even in art. And so much so that it's become known as the Godot situation, uh, at least in some cases. So there is power in waiting and in actively engaging in waiting, I guess is the best way to put it. So it turns out, I would argue, that in the 80 years since the end of World War II, the disjunction caused by the war has not ever been replaced by a sense of, okay, now I know what's going on. I've been able to absorb what happened and come to some understanding. The pace of change has accelerated in the last 80 years. And I think we as human beings consistently find ourselves playing catch up with the reality of the times in which we find ourselves. I think we're in a time like that right now, of a greater rapidity of change. The change is both cyclical, because a lot of what's going on right now is fairly similar to what went on in the 1930s, but it's not cyclical in like this. It's more a spiral cycle where there's a lot that's the same, but things are also changing. And so waiting for Godot is a tool that I think will help us gain our sea legs better as we continue to navigate through these changing times. And so in the end, while the play itself was written, 47, 67, 72 years ago, or it was first performed 72 years ago. It was actually written 73 years ago, 1952. The messages that Waiting for Godot bring to us, I think, are as vital today as they were 7 decades in the past. The need for us to engage in the very real human contemplation, discussions of what is the meaning of life? What does it mean to be part of humanity? And these are not questions that we can discuss and answer and have those answers endure for the rest of our lives. They're questions that we need to re-engage with periodically, hopefully with friends, family, people we care about, people we love. And so Waiting for Godot is also a play to not just read, but reread, to not just go see, but see again. And so I hope that you will. If you have read it before, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you read it subsequently, I'd love to hear what you think. If you've seen or go to see the play, especially, bring that experience to me. I'm looking for an opportunity to go see it. And maybe we'll a year from now or on another episode of Jiggers' Place, we'll talk about Waiting for Godot again. Certainly these human themes will come up in future shows. So thank you very much for joining me. As I mentioned, I think almost every episode of Jiggers' Place, this is the show that I look forward to for 2 weeks because it's really a time to engage in what's most important in life. So I wish you a wonderful rest of the evening and a wonderful rest of the week. a restorative weekend. To all of my Jewish friends and viewers and listeners out there, I hope you have a Shana Tova for the upcoming fast of Yom Kippur. I wish you an easy and meaningful fast. And then on into Sukkot, the joy of that festival. And it'll be during what's called Sukkot Chol Hamoed, the intermediate days of Sukkot, that we will meet again here at Jiggers' place. And it only leaves for me to sign off, as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. Courage at all times, my friends.